Hey guys, Stealth here, and welcome back to Red Dragon, where today we're on Bloody Ridge. Finally, it's not mud fight. This one was sent in by Death Charge. He's operating a Commonwealth General deck, and he said that this is going to be a really good fight. As he writes in his description, he says, this replay is an intense 4v4 conquest where 4 random teammates worked really well together. Now, that is unusual to see that in one sentence. So we have Death Charge, Ninjawan, Arminius, and Punished Pompeo in one team, all operating together, and they're all randoms. I don't really think that you can see that happening too often. Anyway, he continues in his description. We worked really well together, such as by coordinating pushes and doing artillery or airstrikes on high-value targets. In this game, I'll show using Challenger 2s effectively in a major armored battle in the middle of the map. Now this is always what happens. We have Foxtrot, and this is where apparently Punished Pompeo as well as Death Charge are going to be operating in, and usually you have the tanks facing off between this line and that line, or if either party gets pushed back, this line or this tree line, and of course that's when this town gets involved with ATGMs. So we'll just see how Death Charge and Pompeo are going to be handling this map. Over on the left we have... I can barely read that. That must be Death Charge. Arminius is going to move here. Army help there, or help here. And Ninjawan is going to be taking over the town, or at least that's the plan. Now look at all these attack markers going up. These are randoms, so these guys don't know each other. There's no voice communication. And with that, they all know the importance of putting up attack markers. Arminius says, hey, I'm starting out with 2 ASFs. Arminius also says, I'm going to help here and help here. Ninja already claimed the town, so Arminius knows that he doesn't need to take care of the town, and he can just sort of bypass it and try to keep that flank secure. Punished Pompeo is going to be operating in the middle, and Death Charge himself could, in fact, be pushing over here with the Challenger 2s. We'll just see how it goes. Speaking of which, let's see what he opens up with. AVRE, a couple of support troops. I'm not exactly sure what's going to come out of those. Aslavs, nice Aslavs because they're fast. They're going to be out-racing the M113s. More support units, Aslav TOW 2s. Again, these are fast, so they're going to be up front. Challenger Marksmen, Stormer HVM, Warriors, as well as a Challenger 2 and a bunch of Mortars. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of funds at this point. As for Recon, he has 1 CH-136, and I think that for the moment that might be it. I'm not exactly sure what's in those Aslavs, and the game won't really show me either. Because the Aslavs are so close to the other units, I cannot... I can't really see what's in there. Punished Pompeo seems to be... What is that? Is that a US deck? No, it's a Flakpanzer Gepard. German. Yeah, there he is. 2 Leopard 2A4s. Make that 4 Leopard 2A4s. 2 Cheetahs. A bunch of AMX PRIs. I wouldn't be surprised if these are in fact going to be reservists. Although I'm not exactly sure. He also has a couple of mortars, so he can smoke himself up if he needs to. Right flank, Arminius, already has 2 fighters. I'm expecting those to come out any moment. Ninjawan, pushing in with the US deck, M113A3s, 2 M1IP Abrams, a couple of CEVs to really dispose of enemy infantry very quickly, and Chaparrals to keep everything safe-ish, from helicopters at least. And airstrikes themselves are going to be an interesting fight. Now they're already taking artillery fire, and it seems like some of the Aslavs are taking fire, so he's forced to immediately put these guys into buildings to make sure that they're not getting killed off already. I do think, however, that this could be a critical slowdown on his part. If the enemy really capitalizes on this and pushes in with helicopters, which they very well might, then this could be quite the problem for Blue 4. If those helos... Oh no. See, this would have been such a good opportunity. Blue is completely stuck down here. Especially with the infantry that he now has to micromanage back into their vehicles. Some of these vehicles took fire, but at the very least they are very far behind where they should be. If that cluster strike hadn't hit them, then they could have been here or potentially already inside the town, considering the Aslavs are really, really quick. So there's quite a lot of a delay going on, and now he's going to have to make up for it. But interestingly, Red 4 did not capitalize on that. If Red 4 had in fact capitalized on that, they could have they could already be in the town with helicopters, and instead they chose to go here. Big mistake. I for one would be up for a try to see if I could actually make that happen. So somebody on the team plays artillery, or at least has a couple of artillery units and decides to fire on this position. And I gotta say, their arrival of cluster was very adequate. It was right on time, and it slowed Blue 4 down significantly. Then, either myself or another player sends helicopters over here, captures the town, and especially since this is a quite open area, well, especially from here to, let's say, here, you can get some HGMs or light infantry to stave off attacks from such as the Aslav 25s, and then you have something along the lines of VDV or Lijan to counter enemy infantry up close. And all of a sudden you have the sector. And with that, if you put some command unit in the side as well, well, you're sitting at a comfortable +3 early on. In the meanwhile, let's see how the right flank is doing. Because while Ninja Wan did get quite a few units of infantry in here, they are just riflemen. So they're not really going to be holding themselves that well against Proletari. Now, the Proletari aren't fantastic either, but these are at least shock trained, whereas the riflemen are not. So they're far more prone to panicking and far more prone to not being effective for a long period of time. In the middle, we have a bunch of Fusiliers pushing up. I don't think that might be beneficial to the infantry, because as Death Charge already puts up, hey, there's a BU up here. And all of a sudden, all of his Fusilier 90s are dead. CBU incoming. So he's dropping a cluster bomb. He still has 2 Leopard 2A4s. He started out with more. Here's a third one. And I think that the fourth one has already died. So he's down to 3 Leopard 2A4s. But trust me, with 3 2A4s, you can still do a hell of a lot of damage. Now, Death Charge has made it to the town. He's deployed Erics. His Gurkhas are still moving into a beneficial position. He has the Stormer in position. He has more infantry coming up soon. So they should be securing this place and making it very hard for Red 4 to still get in there. They don't really have any flank defense yet. If Red 4 really wanted to, they could try and sneak infantry through here. And for all we know, they might already have done so. Now, the middle is looking a little light. Fortunately, Punish Pompeo is bringing in more reinforcements, and considering what we saw over here, I think that they might be Grenadiers, but I'm not exactly sure. We'll just have to see what comes out of those PRIs. Yep, Grenadiers. So he has plenty of infantry in here now. They are quad stacked. I really hope he's going to split them up, or he's going to be taking a hell of a lot of flack for that in the comments, probably. I'll leave it to you guys to criticize him for this one. The main fight, though, seems to be happening on the right, where there are Grenadiers and some Rangers, but also a hell of a lot of Red 4 units. Who's this? Esris? Yeah, Esris 95 is sending in Morskaya Pekota, and these guys, with their 60, so 15 man per squad, that's gonna wipe out infantry very quickly. Especially units like Grenadiers, they just don't really stand up. And if you add some Spatsnaz, then Red 4 can be virtually guaranteed that they take this town inside the next 2 or 3 minutes. Now, Ninja Wan is causing a little bit of damage to them with Harriers. And interestingly, the Harriers are both making it out alive. They haven't actually taken any damage. Not for lack of trying from Red 4. Because I saw plenty of infrared and potentially a couple of radar-guided missiles go up. But so far they haven't actually managed to hit the Harriers. So the Harriers are fine. And with those rocket pods, they could rearm and coming in again very quickly. I just don't think it's going to be fast enough to save the Grenadiers and the KCT over here. There are a couple of assault engineers being brought in. But assault engineers versus Spetsnaz might not last as long as Ninjawan would like them to. But it's not the only unit that Ninjawan's bringing in. There's more infantry coming in, and especially the Bradleys, in a more standoffish role, could suppress enemy infantry that manages to sneak to buildings outside of town. If they are caught too close, however, it's still going to be a problem, because then they're still very much at risk. A Bradley does not have that much armor, does not have that many hit points. It is likely to very quickly go down. Now, the middle has been reinforced, at least somewhat. But we still don't really know what Red 4 has, considering there's quite a lack of reconnaissance going on. Interestingly, this warrior Milan is firing its ATGMs, which are the Milan F2. They're trying to kill off the BMD-2s. Not really being successful, considering they lost line of sight. And while they do have some units over here, those units are taking cluster fire. So they're being forced to withdraw. And Foxtrot is, I'd say, very much undecided. Currently there is a Sultan over here, and he might very well have eyes on that. So Red 4 probably knows where this Sultan is. Which is not really that good for the life expectancy of the Sultan. The Sultan now relocates into tree line cover. Hopefully they don't really know where that is, but it's of course very possible to guesstimate the position. Just fire cluster artillery at this. And you are, well, quite certain that you might be able to neutralize the CV. For the moment, it's a good thing for Blue 4 that they do have Foxtrot, because with it they're sitting at a +2. And this is very beneficial as they are behind in points. Not that much, but still, they're at 53 and they're at 88. Red 4 captures a hotel. I'm not exactly sure why they hadn't done that already, but maybe they were busy bringing in more forces towards India or the town, or just reinforcing the lines in Gulf and Foxtrot and decided not to capture a hotel just yet. But with it, Blue 4's income just halved and it's only +1. Still, if they keep that up, they'll be fine. But of course Red's not going to make it easy. Now the town is heavily being fought over. All sorts of units. Spetsnaz, Morskaya. I saw Spetsnaz grew in there as well. We just saw Lekota, I think, a couple of minutes ago. And these Morskaya are venturing a little too far into the town. I think they just realized that as well. You can see that the riflemen are really not that good at dealing with enemy infantry. I'd say currently it's the assault engineers which are doing a little bit more damage. But fortunately the light rifle or the riflemen are really not that expensive. The transports, depending on which ones you bring in, are Bradleys cost you 20 points, these things cost you 5. So for 20 points you could arguably get riflemen. Or if you're using rifleman 90 and a Bradley, you're taking 35 points for infantry plus transport. It's not something that you might be able to sustain for a long period of time. Now Revolve is bringing over a couple of Padobranchi, which seem to be taking some good bites out of the Leopard 2A4s. Leopards, I'm not sure why, but they're not responding. I mean, they're shooting back, and now they're even exposing that very vulnerable flank of the Leopard. And, well, it might not be very vulnerable with 9 armor, but it's still quite easy to kill them off, especially knowing that there is a Boombar from the Padobranchi sitting over there, which would happily make short work of this Leopard. But the Leopards have something else to worry about, and that's a couple of T-72BUs from Esris, and to make matters worse, death from above in the form of cluster munitions, and Arminius just loses another 2A4. Last 2A4 is on 1 hit point. The cheetahs are being forced to withdraw, and with that they're forced to give up this area. Now, I've been ranting and raving very much against artillery, because some people just fire it indiscriminately. But this attack, this I like, because at this moment, by firing artillery at this position, Blue 4 is being forced to just withdraw or die from the position. And instead of just throwing artillery over here and hoping that you kill something, making sure that Blue 4 does not have any units which are over here to counter Red 4's maneuvering around this line Red 4 is actually generating an advantage for itself. So this sort of artillery is really good. Unfortunately, he did rush a Leopard 2A5 into death. I'm not really happy about the Leopard 2A5. Oh, this is not good. Get that. No, he's dead. So that was 2 Leopard 2A5s. They did kill one T-72, probably. Or they just lost line of sight on it. I can't really see. I'm thinking that the two might both be alive, so let's work under that assumption. Now, while I was covering the right, Foxtrot is once again in trouble. It is currently being controlled by Red 4, and that's because the Sultan is panicked and is moving. If they keep that in position, Red 4 is no longer going to be generating points, but the Sultan is really not looking too healthy. So it now becomes a question of, do I keep my CV in here? And the answer is that they are currently, but it's right on the edge of the forest and right on the edge of the sector. The Mankati is being pushed forward, hoping to immediately resupply and especially heal up the Sultan to try and keep that thing alive and make sure that Red doesn't get any points, because currently the difference is really, really negligible. It's just 2 points. Leopard for Kenning, supported with the Challenger 2, is trying to do as much damage as possible against the Super Heavy. That's either 1 or potentially 2 of the O surviving, or not so much surviving, T-72 BUs. That BU got killed off by a CBU, so that's a cluster bomb. I'm not exactly sure where that came from, to be actually... It must have been an aircraft. It was not the Lance, because the Lance fires HE. It's not the AS-90s from Death Charge. It's definitely not the M110s, and it's not the Lance, because the Lance is that 20 HE unit. I am wondering what he's going to be firing those Lances at. I would expect those to be fired at the town. Speaking of firing at the town on the left flank is being attacked. This could be a random shelling. It could also be the prelude to an enemy attack. However, if that was the case, I would expect to see artillery come down on this and a smoke screen go up. The second part's not happening, so I'm assuming that the smoke screen and the attack are not happening. So they're just trying to get bloodied a little bit. Oh, I stand corrected. They're not coming in from over here, they're coming in through the hills. They actually made a BMPT crawl all the way up there. I think it might have been taking this route through these little mountain trails. The CH-136 currently cannot really get good vision on it, but the BMPT definitely got some damage in on it. So we know that there's a BMPT up here, as well as a couple of transports. This means that this sector might come under attack very soon. Now, there is so much to cover that I can barely keep up with it. Another F-16 comes in. This one does get shot down, but not before it manages to drop its cluster bombs. And there goes a T-80 That's a good trade. Pompeo says, strike this one now. I'm not sure if that's a question or an order, or an indicator of what he's going to be hitting. But if they can strike out that T-80 they might have a little bit of an easier time securing this middle area. Because I think that by now we can be reasonably certain that both T-72 BUs are dead, and that they only have one T-80 left, and that's a different player. There goes the last T-80 courtesy of the Lynx 3 in the back there. And while Red is doing a charge, it is, at this point, half-assed. Because right now they don't really have that much. And whatever they do have can move forward, but it's going to be rushing right into the firepower of Milan, Challenger 2, more Warrior Milans, and Diggers, which, of course, with their mini-me are not quite in range, but if these guys keep pushing forward, they will be. They also managed to strike out the enemy CV in Foxtrot, and with that they're at a +1 again. For the moment. Because I wouldn't be surprised if Red 4 is not going to let this one slide, and will try to come back from this soon. Again, they launch an artillery salvo at the woods. I'm just a little surprised that they're doing this now. I would be expecting that to happen before you start pushing with the infantry. Because you see that these guys just got reduced from 17 to 3. There's just 3 diggers left. Now again, they would still, the enemy infantry that is, would still be running into the Warrior Milans and the Challenger 2, but they would have a slightly easier time. The Milans with their F2s, or with their Milans, are currently the warriors with their Milans are trying to take care of one of the Osses. They managed to kill one. The other two are a little bit nervous about what's going to happen to them next, but fortunately the warriors pull back slightly and the Osses might get another chance. Although they don't really have that many places to go. Now it looks like there is an attack from Blue 4 imminent on this forest over here. You can see smoke going up. We have Martyr 2s, but they are empty. Infantry was just spawned in, but it's going to take them quite a while to get there, as Punished Pompeo has to travel all this way. In the meanwhile, Bliatman, Bliatman, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. He's coming out of the hills and running right into the Erixes, which are waiting. And you can see that the Erixes are doing a lot of damage. These things do 2 HE damage per shot, and they have plenty of those. It's not just the Erixes, unfortunately for the Mudstrelki, as a couple of mortars, well, are they mortars or are they AS-90s? I think it might be an AS-90, is also providing suppressive fire on the Mudstrelki, and all of a sudden there are no more Mudstrelki. The MTLBVs and the BMPT are trying to do something to at least support their infantry, but they don't really have anywhere to go. And the Erixes don't make short work of the infantry, just that. Now they can also take care of the vehicles very quickly. That makes the Erix such a diverse unit. It's very flexible. It's quite easy to kill, depending on how you're attacking it. Because if you're offloading infantry almost on top of them, then they are going to go down quickly. If you let them fire, like they are doing right now, then it is very much in favor of the Erixes. Because you saw that they made short work of the infantry and the transports. And I wouldn't be surprised that if the BMPT comes too close, he's going to be getting a couple of Erixes up his throat as well. Now Red is definitely making an effort. He even brought a Tunguska M up there. That did kill off the Lynx 3 that was trying to counter off the vehicles here. So for the moment they're sorta safe, but they're not really that much of a threat. Unfortunately, both of his Erixes just got killed off. And with that, the BMPT is suddenly feeling very confident, trying to do some damage against the Aslavs, which, to be fair, are really not that much of a threat. Pompeo says, I'm going to help you here. My healers will help you. I do hope that you're aware that there is, in fact, a Tunguska M. And Tunguska M's really, really like helicopters. Now, let's see what is happening in the middle. As I mentioned, the infantry that came out from all the way back here in the spawn is now finally at the front line. But by this time, the smoke has dissipated. And Red 4 has also brought in new units. This looks like at least 2 tanks, one here and one over here. T-72, I think. Yep, 1989. Time for the Challenger to show its teeth. This is going to be an interesting fight. 23 frontal armor, 22 gun. And this is 20 armor and 20 gun. Max range, the Challenger definitely will win. But these guys come with HEGMs, and they can do damage against the Challenger. Although not that much. The Warriors are also trying to get involved. Unfortunately, the Milan is not the most accurate missile. And despite the fact that they're throwing missile after missile at these T-72s, they're all missing their mark. The Challenger is trying to push forward, but unfortunately the SBS have lost line of sight and the Challenger gets detracked. So while they could have had a perfect opportunity to kill or push back against these guys over here, they didn't quite get it. Now it's time to divert some more attention to the left. Another artillery strike is coming in, and this one getting awfully close, forcing the Sultan to move out of position, giving Red 4 a temporary +1 as the Sultan relocates. And as they're doing that, Red is also coming in with another infantry push. But again, it seems like a half-assed maneuver. And the weird part about this is that Bliatman is a captain rank. From a captain rank with ranked experience, I would expect something else than just throwing quads of Modestrelki at the enemy. Without any sort of smokescreen support, artillery support, or anything like that. Now for the moment, Red did get a few points, but now it's Blue 4's turn again. Blue 4 currently sitting on 162. Red gets a new CV in, and Punished Pompeo has a very good idea about where that thing has to be. Now the Challenger 2 has taken quite a bit of damage, so is forced to withdraw. Unfortunately, the supply unit over here, the Mankadi 6x6, is empty, meaning that the Challenger for the moment is just going to be out of action until it gets repaired. You can put it to a fight with a T-72, although if something comes in with a little bit more firepower than a T-72, you're going to be in trouble. And you really wouldn't want to risk a 170 point tank with that. Now, the Gurkhas have the forest, and with their low 80s, they can very well fend for themselves against any sort of armor that comes too close. The T-64 at the moment is not close enough. So the Gurkhas are sitting currently in the middle of the forest and waiting for a good opportunity to strike. The tank did take some damage from all that artillery fire, and considering that it didn't die, that also gave away the fact that it is probably a command tank. They got eyes on it and got confirmation. It is a T-72 command tank. You saw a couple of cluster rounds go in, but at least they scared it off. And with that, they are again at a +1. Now there is a second Challenger moving up. We have Fat over here, and the other Challenger is Tucker moving forward. Now Fat already scored at least a couple of kills, not just one kill, and has gotten itself promoted. This guy is still fairly fresh. If he can get a good shot at the T-80UM, he might be able to kill it. At least he's going to be far safer to do that than the PALR Milan 2. So that UM fires back once, and the Milans are just gone. Look at this. Both of the guys say, hey, there's a UM over here. So they know that something's up, and they're both putting up a marker. This can work confusingly, but I'd say the average between the two markers is where the 80UM is going to be. So they have a fairly good idea where it is, and unless the tank reverses, it doesn't really have anywhere to retreat to. So we can still be quite certain that the tank's going to be there. And if they still have F-16s with those cluster bombs, they can probably kill it. T-64BV holding the flank over here. Another 64BV in the middle. And what are they coming in with? Another tank. Potentially a 64. No, I don't think that that's the T-64. Well, it might be. We'll just have to get eyes on it soon. The Challenger 2, in the meanwhile, is punishing the T-64BV. The T-72s are now joining the fight, not really doing that much damage. The T-72B takes a hit from the Milan, does not fire back, very much to the favor of the Milan, but Blue 4 is having some other trouble. Another artillery salvo, and again the Sultan survives, takes no damage, but once again panics, which doesn't really matter, but you still need to keep an eye on it. Because all these artillery bombardments, they're bound to hit at some point. Now Fat is back in the fight, thanks to the Mercati and the Chinook. So he now has two Challenger 2s in the front line, both ready to start picking on enemy tanks. This one does not quite have line of sight. Line of sight is a little unpredictable in this area over here. He almost one-shots a T-55, reloads, and then kills it off. The enemy has another T-55, so they still have reconnaissance over there. But there's also quite a few missiles coming in. These, courtesy of the YPR-765 Pratt, which fire the TOW-2. And those definitely whack those tanks very quickly. Now there's the UM. Pretty much exactly where they decided, or where they put the attack markers. They score a kill on the BRDM, so that's the reconnaissance gone. The T-80UM, however, still has a line of sight on something. Takes a chunk out of it to a 4. And that's when Blue starts to smoke this area to force the T-80UM either to to push forward and start to expose itself more and more, or to pull back. Now, Punished Pompeo rushes in with two BO-105Ps with the Hot 2, and interestingly does not get shot at, or at least not yet. Now, an enemy artillery or anti-air unit opens up, And at the same time shoots down both helicopters, as Blue 4 also loses the Sultan on the left. Once again, Red now takes a couple of points. But at this point it doesn't really matter that much. And apparently I missed an incursion over here. Arminius was able to sneak a reconnaissance helicopter all the way over here. Red 4 loses what I think is going to be a ton of artillery over here. Yep, that's a Smirch. That's a resupply unit. That's not a yeah, I think it might be a Malka. And, more importantly, they lose a CV. Apparently, however, they did bring in another CV quickly, or they had a spare one, because they rapidly recaptured Juliet and don't even have to bring in a CV from any of the other sectors. So they still have the +1. That, however, is bound to change, as another Sultan is already on the way. And he's bringing in a couple of Chieftain Mark 11s to help with the push down the middle. Both challengers, Fat, and where is the other one? I'm getting concerned. Oh, there we are. Tucker, and he also has Company Challenger 1 Mark 2s. These guys are not as good as the Challenger 2. Of course they're not. 19 frontal armor, 10 side, and 19 on the gun. Most tanks fire a little bit, or do a little bit more damage than they have armor. This thing has exactly the same. 19 frontal armor, 19 AP. Rate of fire at 7 is a little lacking. Most tanks are a little better than that. This guy has 9 rounds a minute rate of fire. And that rate of fire can decide battles. Now he has both challengers at the front line. And both challengers are being spotted, but they don't really see anything themselves. They're not really sure what's out there, but anything that does expose itself immediately gets shot at by 4 challengers. 2 Challenger 2s, 2 Challenger 1s. But if they have a little bit more reconnaissance, they might spot the enemy tank and be able to do damage to it. This looks like a resupply unit over here. If you can see that and shoot it, then I probably would. Because you can bet your ass that those things are there to resupply enemy tanks and repair them. Red 4 comes back in with more T-80s, but these things are T-80Us, not T-80UMs. So they're not as threatening to the enemy or to Blue 4's armor as the T-80UMs are. More artillery comes in, this time going for the forest. It looks like the BMD-2s are trying to make a push, so Red 4 tries to weaken this area with a little bit of artillery, then pushes in with the BMD-2s. And the BMD-2s have no shortage of targets for their Conqueror's missiles. Fortunately, the Challengers don't really care. These things do 20 damage. These things have 19 frontal armor, so they're not really going to take that much damage. And this is when the BMD-2s push in. Gurkhas, arms open, or at least ready to receive, give these guys a very warm welcome. Wipe out all the BMD-2s, and now you can see the Reds pushing in with smoke, potentially sending in more units. It looks like they're sending in what might be, yep, it's another T-64 BV. Diggers are pushing forward, trying to take this line, but it's a long walk for them. Might not seem that long, but everything is going to be shooting back at them. And again, they're being forced to withdraw. But the VDV, having lost all their transports, are really no match for the Gurkhas, which are not that worried about it. Sure, they took a little bit of artillery fire, but it wasn't that bad. That's about to change. The Gurkhas are now exactly being fired at by the mortars on the enemy team. Similarly, Blue 4 fires their own mortars at the VDV and keeps them away from the Gurkhas, allowing the Gurkhas to do a little bit more damage to them and probably finish them off, or, as they currently seem to be doing, withdrawing. Again, more tank-on-tank warfare. Chieftain Mark 11 was able to do some damage, but unfortunately they lose a command unit. Where's the command unit that they lost? I think it might have been over here. I think the command unit over here might have died, and Punished Pompeo has had enough of this thing being artilleried and just calls in a command tank. This is going to be far more difficult to kill for Red 4. Now Red 4 has to make a play. Blue 4 sitting at 254, Red 4 at 164. And to make matters worse for red, blue is gaining a point. So blue is pretty comfortably and pretty solidly holding this area. So red has to make a move, and they are definitely trying. BMD3s, T80UM, more T80Us. Here you go, enemy push many tanks, you can say that again. One of the red 4 players has had enough and surrenders. But blue, once again, under artillery strike, has to withdraw. Both challengers are fortunately alive and ready, but this opening does allow red 4 to reinforce their tree line and get a little bit more firepower in there, which could prove critical as they're pushing in. T80UM or T80Us pushing forward, doing damage against anything they can see, and you can see that Death Charge is currently losing quite a few units. Aslav 25s are going down, Chieftain going down, M35 resupply unit going down. The whole area over here looks like the landscape of the moon as far as cluster munitions and craters goes. You can see that red 4 really tried to make an effort to just get blue 4 to leave this place. Blue 4 sort of obliged, but not as much, because now they can push back. And now the T80UMs are faced with superior firepower and nowhere to go. The only way that they can go is back, but they cannot make that leap fast enough. And the T80UM goes down. That should be the last super heavy that red 4 had. To make matters worse for red, blue is also breaking through on the right flank. It's not terribly impressive, they're just pushing in with transports, but apparently red either didn't have or no longer has a lot of units over there. They still have a CV though, which I think you might be able to find in these tree lines over here. They still have some units which are pushing through, more infantry. F-16 Block 5s are trying to drop some bombs, standard HE munitions, don't get a kill on the CV if the CV is over there. But red is definitely losing this one. Blue is at 293, red's at 164, and they're doing a 3v4 currently. If red is going to make a move, it's going to have to be right about now. Otherwise, they just don't have enough time to recover all the points that they need. Let's see what red could do if they really wanted to. An attack over here is not that likely, because they're going to have to go all the way through here and then into Echo. They need to neutralize the CV in Echo, which is pretty far in the back, by which time they would probably be taking plenty of airstrikes from Blue 4. A helicopter offensive might work, because this flank is wide open and they could swoop right into Alpha, neutralize the CV and all the support units around it, and then flank around, kill off the Iltas over here, and suddenly red's at a +2, with blue leaving them no force or no way to get more units in. But that does not seem to be going their way. Blue has managed to move up. Punished Pompeo pushes forward the 2A5, which then gets killed off by an SU-25T. The things should not be allowed to move freely around like that, and Bliatman even pushes in the second one. If they have enough intel, enough recon in this area, it could go down very poorly for Blue 4 tanks. Now, I'm not sure what sort of ECM system this Leopard's using, but all of the enemy HGMs suddenly missed. And they definitely had line of sight. So all of these 4 make that 6, actually. We're firing... No, the BVIs don't have any. So we had 5 tanks firing HGMs, and the 2A4 just shrugged it all off. Unfortunately, it doesn't shrug off all the direct kinetic shells coming out of the T-72s. And with it, they do go, or that lonely tank does go down. Still, red just doesn't really have any choice anymore. The battle is decided. They may still hold India, but coming back from this in the next 4 minutes is just next to impossible. And it seems that like they are about to realize that, as we have about 20 seconds left on the game clock, or at least the replay clock. So I think we're going to be seeing exactly the surrendering coming in. So that just leaves Esris and Revolver Ocasio. There's Esris. And then Revolver is going to be next. And with that, Blue 4 wins the fight. Now what I really liked about this particular replay is the use of artillery. Again, normally you see some sort of indiscriminate firing going on. People are just lobbing artillery rounds in a general direction, hoping to hit something and hoping to get some kills. This time around, neither party really did that. They were both trying to kill each other's CVs, of course they were, but Red was also suppressing areas where Blue 4's support units or tanks were making a Red 4 advance impossible. And with those units out of the way, either dead or being forced to withdraw, Red was able to then recover some terrain. Still, I think they might have had a little bit too much artillery and not really enough units on the actual front line to capitalize on that. But then again, that's my theory, and I wonder what yours is going to be. So let me know down below in the comments, what did you think of the artillery usage in this match? I thought it was really good. What do you think? If you have a good replay to send in, do so through the link down below in the description. If you have a little bit of support for the channel, or if you want to support the channel, then I have links for that in the description down below as well. Patreon supporters do get rewards. So if you want to support the channel, it's not going to be for naught. You will get rewards. From access to Patreon nights to having an early insight about what videos are coming up or going to be coming up next. It's up to you which sort of perks you want. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon for more videos.